This is Heart of the Guardians, where every heart has a story worth telling. It was the spring of 1889 when a cold wind swept across the quiet railroad town of Clover Junction, a place where time seemed to move slower than anywhere else. The trains came and went, carrying travelers, soldiers, and dreamers. But that morning, something unusual happened. On the worn wooden bench near the station platform sat a woman, clutching a small carpet bag against her chest. Her name was Clara Holt, and though her face carried the softness of youth, her eyes told stories of rejection and heartbreak. Her wedding dress peeked out from beneath her dark coat, wrinkled, dusty, and far from the pure white it once was. She had been abandoned. The man she was supposed to marry, a merchant from the neighboring town, had taken one look at her when she stepped off the train, and left. He muttered something about her being too big, and with the cruel laughter of his friends, he turned his back on her forever. Clara sat there for hours, tears silently cutting paths down her pale cheeks. The townspeople passed by, whispering, judging, but none stopped to ask if she needed help. Across the street, Henry Dawson, a widower and farmer, was loading sacks of grain onto his wagon. His life had been nothing but work and silence since his wife, Mary, passed away 3 years earlier. The house felt empty, the fields endless. Some nights he'd sit on the porch, listening to the wind, wondering if anyone would ever call his name again. As Henry wiped the sweat from his brow, he noticed the woman by the station, her posture, the loneliness radiating from her. Something in his heart stirred. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was something deeper, a recognition of pain he knew too well. He walked toward her. "Miss," he said gently, "you all right?" Clara looked up, startled, embarrassed to be seen crying. She forced a small smile. "I'm fine, sir, just waiting for someone." Henry's gaze softened. "If you've been waiting since morning, I reckon they're not coming." Her eyes fell to the ground. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're not." He hesitated for a moment, unsure if it was his place to pry. But then she continued, almost as if needing someone, anyone, to hear her. "I came here to be married. But he changed his mind when he saw me. Said I wasn't what he expected." The shame in her voice cut deep into Henry's chest. He'd seen cruelty before, but never something so heartless. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "No man with sense would treat a lady that way." She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "I suppose not everyone is meant to be loved." Henry studied her for a long moment. She wasn't what most would call beautiful, but there was something kind in her face, something real. The way her hands shook as she clutched her bag, the quiet dignity she tried to keep even in humiliation, it spoke louder than any beauty ever could. "You've got somewhere to stay?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, I spent what I had on the ticket." He looked out toward the dusty road that led to his lonely farm, and before he knew it, the words left his mouth. "Then come with me." Clara blinked, unsure she'd heard right. "Sir, I've got a place. Not much, but it's warm. You can stay the night. No harm'll come to you." She hesitated, every instinct warning her not to trust a stranger. But when she looked into his tired eyes, she saw no danger, only kindness. "And sir," she agreed. The ride to his farm was quiet, the wheels creaking over dirt and stone. Henry stole glances at her now and then, the way she stared out at the open plains, as if trying to imagine a life that might still be waiting for her somewhere. When they reached the farmhouse, Clara gasped softly. It wasn't large or elegant, but it had charm, ivy growing up the sides, smoke curling from the chimney, a porch swing swaying in the breeze. "It's beautiful," she said softly. Henry smiled faintly. "Used to be, when my wife was around. Haven't kept it up much since." He helped her down from the wagon, his calloused hands gentle. Inside, the air smelled faintly of pine and dust. Clara couldn't help but notice a photograph on the mantel, a woman with kind eyes holding a baby. "Your wife?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Mary, and our boy, Samuel. They're both gone now." "I'm sorry," she whispered. He gave a slow nod, his jaw tightening. So am I. They ate a quiet supper of bread and stew, and when the dishes were done, Henry said, "You can have the bedroom. I'll sleep out here." Clara wanted to protest, but he wouldn't hear it. She thanked him, and before going to bed, she said softly, "You've done more for me in one evening than most have done in a lifetime." Henry only nodded. No one deserves to be left out in the cold. That night, Henry lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Mary, about how he'd sworn never to open his heart again. But something about this woman, this stranger, made the house feel alive again. Morning came with the sound of birds and the smell of biscuits. Clara was already in the kitchen, apron tied neatly, humming a tune. "You didn't have to do that," Henry said, stepping in. "I wanted to," she replied with a smile. "You've given me a roof. Least I can do is make breakfast." Days turned into weeks. Clara helped around the farm, feeding the hens, tending the garden, mending clothes. The house slowly began to feel less like a memory and more like a home again. The townsfolk, however, had their opinions. When they saw Clara beside Henry at the market, whispers spread fast. "That's her, the one left at the station," someone muttered. "And now she's living with the widower." But Henry didn't care, and when Clara overheard the gossip, Henry took her hand and said, "Let them talk. They don't know what we've been through." One Sunday morning, as the church bells rang in the distance, Henry turned to Clara as she hung laundry on the line. The sunlight caught in her hair, and he realized how much warmth she'd brought back into his life. He cleared his throat. "Clara." She looked up, curious. He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking. You came here a stranger, and I don't rightly know what I'd have done without you these past weeks. The house feels alive again. I feel alive again." Her eyes softened. "Henry." He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "I don't have much to offer. Just this farm, and what's left of my heart. But if you'd have me, I'd be honored to make you my wife." Tears welled in her eyes. "You mean that?" "I do," he said. "Right here, right now." There was no fancy church or wedding gown this time, only a simple ceremony by the creek, with the preacher from town and a few kind neighbors as witnesses. When the preacher asked if Henry Dawson would take Clara Holt to be his lawfully wedded wife, Henry looked into her eyes and said firmly, "I will, for as long as I'm breathing." And when it was Clara's turn, she could barely speak through her tears. "I will," she whispered. The moment their hands joined, something shifted in the air. Two broken souls, once abandoned by life, found their way back through each other. As the seasons changed, their bond deepened. They laughed often, worked side by side, and filled the house with music again. The pain of their pasts became a thread that wove them closer. Years passed. The whispers in town faded. People began to say Henry Dawson was the happiest man they'd ever seen. And he was. One autumn evening, as the golden sun set over the wheat fields, Henry watched Clara standing by the porch, her hair silvering now, her face glowing in the fading light. He walked up behind her, slipped his arms around her waist, and said, "Do you ever think about that day at the station?" She smiled softly. "Every day. I was sure my life had ended. But you found me, Henry. You gave me a home when I had none." He kissed her cheek. "No, Clara, you gave me one." And as the train whistle echoed faintly in the distance, the same sound that once marked the start of her heartbreak, Clara leaned into his arms, knowing it had also brought her the greatest blessing of all. Because sometimes, the people life breaks are the very ones meant to put each other back together. And the man who thought his love had died, found it waiting for him on a cold morning at a quiet little station. This is Heart of the Guardians, reminding you that love doesn't always arrive when we expect it, but it always arrives when we need it most.